Okay, so today we are going to continue our series by talking about Flask forms. So in our folder for Flask form, we are going to create like a file. We'll just call it app.py. So we are going to be doing majorly everything here as our app base. From there, we will progress to um, we'll progress to build our templates which we will use. So for now, the template is empty, but here app, and let me navigate here to Flask form. Okay, so that's where I am. Okay, great. Now, normally we know if you want to create our application, we say from Flask, import Flask, and then we create an instance and pass it the name variable here. Okay, by now we should be getting used to this. And then if name is equal to, people should be able to explain this statement, right? I think we'll talk it about. You now take the app and run it, but we'll run it in debug mode. Okay, so we save it. Here, let me run the app to see that if it's okay. Clear the terminal, and I will say Python app.py. Okay, so it's running, although we've not created any root, but our app is there, is running. So today we want to talk about form, and to create form in with Flask. I'll introduce us to um, a library. Let me shut down the app. Make sure I'm in our virtual environment. Someone should mute it. Okay, so we are in the virtual environment. Let me mute goodness. Yeah. Okay. So we're in the virtual environment. Now there is a Flask library which is WTF, which is used majorly for forms with Flask. So I can say from Flask underscore WTF import Flask form. So now I notice I've not installed this in my virtual environment, so it's underlined. Okay, so I'll just try to pip install it. Install Flask underscore WTF. Pip install Flask WTF. Okay, so now it's installed. Let me upgrade this. Okay, terminal should be ready in a minute. Okay, so now WTF is installed. So from this library is used to handle the forms with Flask. So I'll import a package called, or a class called Flask form. Now the other thing is, whenever you want to work with form, you need to have a kind of secret key. in your app. So to configure our app to have a secret key, we do app.config. Then we'll set a secret key. Yes. Hold on. Give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. I received a call. Okay, now we can set our secret key to be equal to anything. So I can say, excuse me, secret key. Now, whenever we are doing configuration in an application like this, it's not good to have the configuration like a secret key written like this, because anybody now that picks up my application can see the key. It's just like a password. Okay, and if person see it now, it's just like he has stolen it. So there are better ways to do this, but for now we'll just keep it here. As we go along, we'll show you how you can keep this one in environment variables and pick it from there, so that it's not easily accessible by somebody just seeing your code. But after we configure our secret key, because this, I'll show you where this is also going to play a part in the security of this application when we are, because we're doing with forms now. So we now create a class. Um, I'll call this class um, let me say user form, and I will now pass this Flask form that we imported here into this class. So here in Flask, sorry, in Flask, we need to write a class for our form elements. These same form elements, you can actually build them with HTML and CSS, but it will take you quite a while to build. But this Flask WTF engine has already simplified it for us. So just by creating a form the way we are doing it now, you can have your form available for you to use in your root. So in our form now, we are going to define um, fields that will be in the form. That's field that we want to use in our form, right? So for now, we'll just do a simple form so that we'll understand, get grasp the content, then we'll do another form and improve on it for today. Are we together?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So now our form, I can say username will be equal to, okay, now I need to import something else, right? That would help us um, get the fields. So we also need to, from WTF forms, we are going to import. This one came with Flask WTF when we imported it. So we import string field. You know what a string is, right? Now we have a string field. It's just like in a form, an area where we are going to put string. Okay, if that makes sense. So that's a field for strings. And then we'll just use it to now say, let this be equal to string field, and we'll pass a message, call it username. Okay. or we can also maybe just call it like a question instead of just username. We can say, what is your name? So this when you have this string field, the first parameter you pass like this is the label, which we go with the string field in the form. You will see that when we get into the template. What is your name? And with this, we've created that field, but we could still add something else. So apart from string field, I can still import validators. Just let's go slowly so we understand. WTF forms again, dot validators. You can import data required. Okay. Now, don't be confused, just follow me. So now username, we have a string field. What is your name? But in this form, I want it to be required so that the person cannot submit the form without the username. So in that regard, I will then add the validator, which I also just imported from WTF validators data required. So validators takes a list. So I'm going to add validators in this list, and the validator will be using now is data required. Okay, which we imported. This one that we imported here from WTF validator. We then pass it into the validators, which simply means this particular field on the form, if you did not fill it, you cannot submit the form. You know how when you go to fill some form online, there are some data in the form that you must fill. If not, you can't submit it, right? Because it's like required. So that is what this validator is doing. So validators, they check our form elements to see if we have filled them correctly. Based on, there are different types of validators, but this one is just data required. I mean, okay, there must be data. You cannot leave it empty and submit the form. It's there. And validators takes a list. So data required can be one item. You can put in more items. So let's just say the next thing we want to collect is email, the email of the user. So it's still going to be a string field. And this string field, let's ask it as a question too. What is your email? Okay. Now, we don't want the user to leave it blank. So we are going to still put these validators for um, for data required. And because it's an email, I need to get another validator so that this one will help the user when you're filling the form. You have to put something that's an email there. An email has a format. An email should be something at something dot something. Okay, so like maybe lesga@yahoo.com is a form. These validators I'm putting here, Flask have made it kind of a little bit easier for us. If not, we would have written these things one by one. But of course, with repetition of coding over the years, people have built these flags, for example, as a tool that we're going to use for web development. Then there are some things that you don't need to write by yourself. They've already written them. So you just import them and put it into your code and use. So with data required, we also are going to get email, another validator to check to make sure the user fills in an email. So we'll also put it here. So this one has one validation. This one has two validators. We can even put a length. Maybe this name now, we can just still put a length by saying something like length into capital letter. Okay, we need to import length too. So is it okay, it's also a validator. So we import length and we put it with our validator here. So this one now has two. So we can have length and set some parameters to this length that the minimum someone's name should be maybe 4 characters, and the maximum of name you want it to put should be equal to 20 characters. Oh, this is not blocking. Okay. So we have username. Now the thing is long as if it's covering our screen. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to break this one into another line like this. Okay. What did I do? I just put my cursor in front of validator, press enter to break it because it was getting quite long, right? So we'll just see everything on one line. So what is your name? You have some validators. The validator will check that you put in a data, and the validator is going to check that the data must be between 4 and 20 characters. Email also has two validators, which is you need to have a data in this field and you need to have an email. Then for our form again, we are going to have a submit button. Submit, which will now be equal to, for this also, we need to import submit field from WTF forms. We now need a submit field. So this one will be a submit field that will just say submit. So with this now, we have designed a class for form in our application. Now, what we are just doing, we are doing everything in one page. As we go through this series, we'll also show you how to separate the form, because in a proper application, the form will not be in this page. This particular file where we have app.py, for instance, we can separate form. Form will have its own app file. We can also put configuration in that file to simplify things, because you will see what will happen today. This thing is going to grow big, but in proper application, we would split it. We'll still show you how to split it, but for now, let's just flow by building a single page app, okay, for learning purpose. Now we'll go ahead to create a route like we have been creating before. So we can have at app.root. Let this be our home page, and we can just call it index. So this is our index page where we are just going to see the form, because like I say, we are just doing a simple application. Okay, so we can just have that username to be equal to false, and email to be equal to false. I'll tell you why I'm doing all this as false at first. So basically, when you first come to the page, to this route where you're going to see the form, I'm going to assume that username and email does not exist, so that's why I just call them false. Then we go ahead and initialize the form. So form is equal to user form. So we are going to have an object of this form created. Now we will then have that our normal return statement, render template. So render template, okay, we've not imported this. So from Flask again, we now import render template. So from Flask, we add render template. So now render template, and the template we are going to be rendering will be let me say home.html, and we'll pass the form to the page, form equals form, and we are going to pass username equals username, email equals email. In our previous classes, we showed some of these things, so we are just building on that. So what we basically have now is a root that has a username that is false, email is false, and then there's a form. This form now is a an instance of this class, because you remember the class is an instance of the class, or it's an object of the class. So this form object is an instance of this class. Okay, this is the class. This is one object of the form created. Then we are passing this form into the template called home.html, which we are going to create. We've not created it. Okay. Are we together? Hmm?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So now let's go and
Yes,
create.
but
Go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Um, can we can do this on PyCharm, can we?
Yes, you can do it on PyCharm. Remember, PyCharm is just an IDE, while um, we are dealing with Python and Flask. Hmm. So it's exactly the same thing you're going to be doing in PyCharm. Okay, now we've written one root. Because we have a form, we are going to also add some methods to this root. Okay, so the methods that we are going to add should be a list of, because we want them to be able to get the form and post the form, which is like submitting the form. These are like HTTP method, get and post. Get is where you're requesting for the root, and then post is submitting to the root. So we have to set this so that this particular root can handle these two requests, both get and post. But now here is it. Let's save this. Before we run it, let's go and create the file that we wrote here, boom.html. And we know for Flask application that this HTML file, we need to keep it in the folder called templates. So when we go to that folder, we'll create a new file, home.html. Now in home.html, we are not going to we're not going to um, do much HTML for now, right? Not as if we're trying to make it so beautiful for now, but let's just do something simple. Let us understand the form. Okay. Now, let me change the name instead of home, because the previous file I deleted is home and it's recognizing it. But let me just change the name from home to, let me say, home page .html. So yeah, home page. And then we'll go back to our application and make sure that this is home page. Okay, because it has to match. Now in this, let me bring out the standard HTML. And what we are going to do here is we are going to display the form for the user. Okay, we're going to display the form for user. So we passed in this part, we passed in form, and we have here, we passed in a username and an email address. So we are going to make sure that we use that on the HTML to display all of this for the user. Okay. So in the home page, we can just quickly use what we have learned from Ginger. I can just have an if statement. If username, that means if there is a username, then we have else, and then whatever we put here is what will happen if there's no username. Now then we have an end if. So if username will just return maybe a H1 element that says your name is username and your email is email. Your name is username and your email is email. Remember this username and email, where are they coming from? We pass them here into this template. Okay. So if there is no username and email, what do we want them to see? We can then say they should see another H1 that will just say, please fill in your your name and email below. So now we are going to have a form, that the form that we designed now, right? We designed a form, so now we are going to show the form to the user. That makes sense. Now before we display the form, we are going to put in a form element, and we will not need an action for this form. We'll just say the method should be equal to post. Okay. So in the form, this is where you do the security of your form. There have to be this particular element, form dot hidden tag is a kind of Flask element that you need to keep here, right? It's going to help secure your form, and then we'll then bring out our form elements that we designed. So sorry, we have our form dot username, I think, form dot username dot label, and beside it we can have the form dot username in parentheses. I'll copy this same thing to the next line, but now it will be email, and then here email. Okay, then one more item for our form would be the submit button. So if you just look at what we are putting in the form, is basically what we created here. You see username, email, and then submit. Okay, so this will be the label of the username, and this is going to be the label for the email. So let's save this file, and then save this file. Okay, and then we'll test the code. So let's run our app again. So good 18, our app is running. So if I click on it, let me show you, bring it what is showing. So when I check the app, this is what I see. Okay, so we have an error. Okay, when I run it, I check the page, there's an error. Let's see what it is. So Ginger 2 exception. Whenever you see an error, it's not something you should be afraid of. Just try to look at it. What is it saying? Ginger 2 exception, undefined error. And it told me that from is, yeah, it has from, is undefined. So I already know that there is a from on my page that is, it doesn't understand. It's an undefined error. So quickly, I'll go back to check my application. Where is this from? Okay, we could even still look here to find out where it is. So if you look at this place now, you see on in the home page, or on the home page on line 18. On line 18, we have this from dot hidden tag. This should be form. So I did a typo. That's why the error came up. So I'll go back and you will see it. The typo is even in more than one place. So instead of form, I was saying from. So it should be form. Mhm. Okay, form. Then I save it. And then when we save it, the terminal should refresh because a change has been made. Okay, no, this is on the HTML, so no problem. Let's go and refresh the page. So let me refresh it and see what happens. So there we go. The page is okay, it's running. I have a lot of typo, even the spelling, please. But let's just leave it for now. Please fill in your name and email below. So this is what we just did, right? We said if there is a username, then what you should see, your name is username and your email is email. But if you don't have username and email, which means you've not filled the form, um, what you should see should be please fill the form. Okay, please fill the form. Now this is our form, which we put here. And where did we get all these elements from the form? It's from what we designed in our class here. Username with all these parameters, string, email, and then submit field. Those are the things we designed in our form. So they are now before us. But now if we submit, nothing is going to happen even though we fill anything. This is showing us, please fill this out because data is required, right? And your email, even if we fill something, nothing will happen because, or we might even get an error. No, nothing will happen because I've not yet written the code. So let's just try it and see what happens. So let's say my name is Lazyga or Alfred, and my email is alfred at email.com. Then submit it. So you see, nothing is happening because we've not written what will happen when you submit the form. We've only just designed the form. Now let's go and do what will happen when we submit this form. So you go back to your root. How you handle the form is you're going to keep an if statement. If this if statement which first check if the form is valid.